Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there with me. There's been so many great presenters today, so many great topics um, that I wanted to just go over sort of Pasofying, which this is a word I made up, by the way. I like it, and then we just kind of went with it, and it's worked really well. About how this all comes together, right? We had Trevor, who did something really interesting with like data and science and breaking down the demographics. Sarah talking about intersectionality, and then we had our two community presenters, the Geo Testimonios and Laura Turon, with her paradox presentations and how they can sort of come into our classroom. And then Renee's recipes. And I think sometimes it's like, wait, how does this all come together? And if you look at each one of them, they're each talking about different ways that you can either incorporate community or cariño in the classroom. And I know that cariño is a very broad term. It just means care in English, but in Spanish, I feel like it has a little bit more weight to it, right? This cariño. And there's little things that we all do already, like you're here. So you obviously already have some cariño that you do. And it's also seeking more, right? Knowing that we're always learning more, and we want to learn more. And so that is kind of the magic of Pasofying our classrooms. Let me go on. Okay, so I wanted to start with the Pasos program mission. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I'm going to give you just a second to read it. Okay, I think we're good there. I read through it. I'm a fast reader, but I think we all read together. So at its heart, this is the mission, but I always do this with my students. What does this mean in regular words? And you can type it in the chat for me. So what is our mission saying in just regular old words? Are we still reading? Did I lose y'all? Okay, good. Thank you, Edith. Connect us with El Paso. Bring us together. Anything else? Okay, to me, it's saying anti-racist teaching, using care and kindness as educators in the classroom, chance to hear each other's values, understanding. Good. Awesome. Okay, these are all great. And you're all correct in one way, shape, or form, right? Giving a students a chance to share who they are is wonderful. Okay, these are all great and you're all right. So you all get an A. Oh, pride in our community is a good one. Yes, pride in our community is a big part of this. So if I was your teacher and you were my students, everyone would have an A in the class right now, right? Yes, Renee loves A's. Everyone has an A, okay? So I'm gonna keep going and we're gonna talk about this a little bit more and how it can actually be applied. Let's see. Okay, so I wanted to give you some statistics, about El Paso, and this is ever changing, okay? So whenever you Google El Paso, this is like the most prominent thing that comes up. I had to do some deep diving on certain areas, but it's no surprise to most of us that there is a heavy Latinx population in El Paso because of our location and also the state of Texas, used to be a part of Mexico. So, but our students sometimes refer to, sorry, I saw the and I got distracted. Our students often refer to the city like a town, and they say there's nothing to do here. And this is something that I try to change in my classroom. In that El Paso is actually the 6th largest city in Texas and the 22nd largest city in the United States. We're a pretty large city, and people often overlook this, I think, and that's just cumulatively, right? If we look at things, El Paso, Las Cruces has a population of over a million, okay? And then given our location, Yes, I'm sorry, I get distracted by the chat. Renee, you're correct. Okay, so our location is we're a border city, right? So if we have Juarez, Mexico, El Paso, so we're the largest metropolitan area. We're often called Paso del Norte. So combined, that's 2.7 million residents, right? We're very much a commuter city as well. Depending on which campus you are, you do have a heavy influx of international students coming to study, right, as well. And so we're one of the largest bilingual and binational workforces of anywhere, like in the Western Hemisphere. Okay. So El Paso ranks fifth in the nation with the largest proportion of Latinx population, right? Given our history, where we are. And so that all gives us rich cultural roots. Now, I did focus on Latinx because, well, I'm Latina, right? And most of my students are, but I do want to stress that not all of our students are, and our demographic is changing, right? We have different areas of people, different culture, and I'm going to link it back to Renee's presentation. And just if we look at the different kinds of foods and restaurants that are popping up around the city, right? For the longest time, well, I love Mexican food, really that's all you could find here, and then maybe some Asian food. And now there's just these wonderful places. Like I ate at a Filipino place recently, and it was so wonderful going in there. If you're curious, it's on the east side, and it's called Halo Halo. And I was the only person speaking English there, and it was such a wonderful experience to have, like, in my city, because I'm from El Paso. I have not lived here my entire life, and so seeing that happen and that develop is wonderful. So El Paso is still changing, but we still have those rich cultural roots. Was any of this information surprising to you before I move on? I'm gonna pretend all of you are like nodding your head. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ted. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Right, I'm gonna move on. Do you have any questions for me so far? Guess how large we are compared to the nation. Okay, great. I'm gonna keep going then. Okay, so a question that we often get asked is, how is the Pasos program organized? Like, how can I get involved, right? I've gone to the trainings, I want to do stuff, what do I do? And so I'm going to explain a little bit how Pasos is organized and how we have several moving parts, and it's great. That's what I love about the program, is that you can work on the part that you want to work on. Because I know sometimes, and I'm going to be honest, some of our committee work, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Why am I here? Right? We've all had that moment at work that you're like, no, I don't want to do this. And so part of why I love Pasos is that I get to do things like this, to spend my Saturday with you and learn so many great things from my colleagues and from community presenters. And yeah, so I'm going to keep going. I keep trying to click on my PowerPoint arrow and not the arrow I'm supposed to click on. Okay, so first, we're a group of educational activists who advocate for our students and community, both in and out of the classroom. Okay, so we do a lot of stuff in the classroom, but we do just as much outside, and we do that through our various Pasos teams. And so here, I'm gonna just give you a brief overview of each of them. But so the first one is, we just have faculty who want to teach culturally relevant teaching methods, right? And I'm going to go over what culturally relevant means, because it's often confused with critical race theory, which for me, it does not bother me, but for some people it might, and I'm going to go over that. So you just teach your class, have some cariño aspects in it, and I'm going to go over what those are in a little bit. And then you just give us your CRNs for the class, because that's how we track it. That's how we keep data, right? We also have our high school level. We have our core team. That's me, Crystal, Robert, Arturo Valdespino, and Lucia. And we're the ones that are trying to figure out where things work and supporting everyone. We have our community cariño team, and they partner with a local nonprofit each academic year. This year, we partnered with El Pasoans Fighting Hunger, and we do volunteerism in the community, both faculty and the students, and it's a really beautiful thing. We have College of the Community, and that team does a lot of community events that highlight culture. And one of the things I can think of is this past semester they had a talk with Dolores Huerta. They highlighted, and I'm thinking of the future now too. I think there's going to be this really cool event in the spring, and I don't want to give away too much, but I think it's going to be like a car show kind of with music and for Cesar Chavez Day. And so they do just so many great events in the community that promote activism and awareness. Bracing cariño in the classroom, well, you're here, so I think you know what that means. High school outreach, Renee mentioned this in her presentation, in that we do presentations, workshops for our high school faculty, or I'm sorry, our high school students. Media, they just help get the word out. The Passos Journal, you heard me read from earlier today, and we have an event next Friday. We have a scholarship team that's working on a scholarship, especially for Passos students, excuse me. Student and familia engagement. And part of Passos is including our family and our friends in what we do, okay? And then, of course, we have the wonderful Office of Student Success, the ladies that are doing all the tech support, Miss Robin Simmons that emails you everything. So that's a lot of moving parts, isn't it? I'm going to pretend you all just nodded with me. Okay, yes, you nodded. So each of these things, some of you are involved in it now, right? Yeah, I thank you. You nodded. So like Trevor helps me with the cariño training. Edith is part of the, I believe the college, the community team. And so, and some people just want to teach. So what we're doing is really, I like to consider it not just a program, it's a movement, and that we're really celebrating our population, our location, and our stories. And when I say our, I mean both us and our students. Right? So Passos is more than a program, we're a familia, right? And so we have community activism, we've had voter registration events, we have cultural events, we celebrate our students, and then we do all of this through culturally relevant teaching practices, okay? And I know you're like, she keeps saying that, but what is that? I'm gonna get to it, promise. Okay? So how does cariño translate to the classroom? So culturally relevant teaching is a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students' cultural reference in all aspects of learning. Some of the positive characteristics of culturally relevant responsive teaching are, and I'm going to go through this quickly as I can because I don't want to keep you too long, but I'm going to give you some examples. Now, when I give you examples, I'm giving you my personal examples, but this goes across discipline, right? I am an English teacher, so it's easy for me to give like writing assignments, but there's ways that you can do this and you can incorporate. And if you get stuck on how to incorporate these things into your own discipline, please reach out to me. I love coming up with ideas. If many of you that know me here know that I love just giving ideas and coming up with stuff. So the first point is positive perspectives on parents and families, and I touched upon this earlier, and that's including our students' families and friends in their education. And I know you're thinking like, wait, how does that work? And that's just making events open to their friends and family, right? So any of our events that we have, invite them. You can also create assignments where they have to reach out to family members. I'm going to link this back to Sarah's presentation and how she's like going down her genealogy, right? That would be a beautiful assignment to have your students like try to find their genealogy and include that. And just making it open, letting them share about food and their culture, and all of those things are linked together so closely. And I know, again, I write, so it's easy for me to say this, but that could be an icebreaker, right? What's your favorite meal and why? And incorporating little bits like that through the class. So communication of high expectations from the beginning, let your students know what your expectations are. If they're unsure of what that is, then explain it to them, right? Think of their background and your background and where you can meet in the middle to make these expectations clear. Link what you're teaching to their future, right? I once had a student tell me, I just take English because I have to, but I don't need it because I'm going to be a nurse. And I almost fell out of my chair And I sort of pointed out, like, nurses have to write notes at the end of each shift, and they should be legible and clear. And then they kind of like paused, like, oh, wait, I had not thought of that. And there's so many funny memes out in the world of things that were misspelled, that sometimes I'll incorporate those in my class and show them, like, look, this person did this, you know? And it's English and writing for me is not just about I can write an essay. It's about communication. It's about being clear and having just a strong background to say what you want to say, right? So that's one example. Learning within the context of culture. So thinking about your teaching style and then thinking about our students and what teaching styles they've encountered in the past, right? For a long time, I used to get upset when our international students, the ones from Juarez, would come and they would say, teacher, teacher. And it used to drive me crazy because I was like, I'm not saying student, student, right? Why are they doing that? Until my husband actually explained this to me. Many of you might know, but I'll share. So my husband is from Colombia, and he's like, well, in Spanish, it's appropriate for them to say maestra. That's like a sign of respect. So these students were directly translating maestra to teacher, and they were telling me teacher, teacher. So they thought they were being respectful, when really it was just a bit odd when it's directly translated, right? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And so it's taking that into consideration, varying how you teach your students, not just let me lecture to you, but maybe putting them in groups, maybe having them teach the lesson, right? That sort of idea of flipped learning, and linking those to culture. Like, let them talk about their cultural differences, let them show the things they're learning from their classmates, and then incorporate community in your classroom, right? Yes, it's giving them agency, exactly, right? So those are several ways that you can kind of hit that point. So student-centered instruction. A lot of times I think we start to build our curriculum based on what's easiest for us, and sometimes that's not the best. And I'm going to give you an example. I teach Chicano Lit, and that's like a sophomore level English class, right? They've already taken English 1301 and 1302. And earlier this week, I was grading some papers. And for that essay, I give them the prompt 3 weeks in advance. And then I remind them, work on your essay, work on your essay. And then they turn in the final essay. In 1302, I have them write an outline and I check it, and I have them make a works cited page and I check it. And then they give me the essay. And when I got to my Chicano Lit class, I was like, well, do I need to do that? They've taken 1302. They have the bones of how to write an essay. And I want to tell you, the first 3 essays I opened were not where they should be. One didn't have a thesis. One was one giant body paragraph. And then the third one, I just won't even tell you about it. And then I thought, okay, I did that because I didn't want to check the outline. And I really didn't want to check a works cited because I felt at this point I shouldn't. But really it's going back and like, ugh, they still need it. They need the reminders, right? They need that. And so that's that student-centered instruction and thinking of what is best for them versus what's best for us, right? Another way that you can do that is have your students come up with their own projects. I love to do this and it drives them insane. One of my favorite persuasive essays for them to do is that they have to come up with a positive change that they're pitching to city council. I love this idea. I've had it for a while now, but it's because it hasn't gotten old, because the students are coming up with the topic and I help them the entire way. Allowing students to select their reading material, right? What are you like? Can you make up maybe a list that you've already gone through and then let them pick what they want to read so that it's something that interests them or a topic that interests them. And then having students learn a lesson like linked to the community. Link your lesson to the community if possible, right? I was popping in between the breakout sessions, but when I popped into Laura Turon's session, she was talking about her like how her art and how it's very mathematical in certain ways. And she talked about science, and I was like, oh, this would be really cool to incorporate in a math class and or a science class, right? And knowing that this will connect them to the community. Next point is culturally mediated instruction. And that's just asking a little bit about them asking their background, asking what they're understanding. A lot of times if we lecture in front of a class and then we say, does everyone understand? They won't respond right away. Um, I made the joke earlier, but I was like imagining everyone shaking their head. But I know some of you were typing or thinking like, do I have a question? And it's really sort of just serving up these moments, maybe individually or in small groups where they might feel more comfortable um, asking. And then adjusting your teaching style as well, right? Depending on the class, we've always had some of us might have had like a really quiet class or a really loud class, and we have to adjust our own teaching. And it's that same thing, but just taking that moment to ponder it. Okay. So reshaping the curriculum is going through and looking at your textbook. And again, I'm sorry, I teach English. This is easy for me to look at in that, do I have to teach Shakespeare still? And I feel like I just knock Shakespeare a whole lot. Do I have to teach Shakespeare? No, I don't. I can teach authors that my students um, might have more of a connection to. I like teaching local authors. I like teaching Latinx authors. And when I say Latinx, not just Mexican American literature, but Dominican literature and Colombian literature. And I love that they can see themselves, but then also slight differences in like the food that are mentioned maybe in the stories. And I'm thinking of a particular story, so that's why. So reshaping your curriculum and using resources outside of your text, encouraging your students to interview community members, and just provide students information on alternative viewpoints, beliefs, or topics. Now, we all have our own beliefs, we all have our own systems, and they're gonna affect our curriculum for sure. But it's letting students research different things and come up with their own opinion instead of pushing our agenda on them as well, right? Like let them explore all these things and then ask them what they think instead of telling them what to think or having them regurgitate what you said to them, right? Because that's not why they're here. And finally, teaching as a facilitator. So again, going back to culture, varying your teaching approaches to accommodate diverse learning styles and utilizing resources in the community. And that's why in the Cariño training each year, we've incorporated people from our community and thinking that maybe you can reach out to Laura and have her artwork in your class or have her students do an assignment about her artwork or doing an assignment based off the geotestimonios. And we had so many other community members present that it's just a great way to bring the community into your classroom, thinking about time and things like that. So I'm going to ask, because that was a lot of information I just gave you. Do I have any questions? Are you in shell shock, still just digesting what I said? I'm going to, okay, we're good. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. So something that we've done with Pasos is we've come up with successful classroom practices, right? And so we've come up with some steps that we can choose from to sort of like apply to our classroom to make it to help make it successful, right? So there's the power of relationship rich teaching, and that's communicating with your students, reaching out to them every couple weeks to see how they're doing one-on-one, right? And you can do that through technology. I love Remind. If you're teaching in person, maybe like following up with them, things like that, but keeping that connection and doing it every 3 or 6 weeks and keeping it throughout the semester. I always check on my students, and I just ask, how are you? Not, do you have questions about my class? So if I was gonna message Lucia as the last one that text, hey Lucia, how are you? I just wanna see how you were doing. And you'll be amazed what students will tell you. Sometimes it has nothing to do with your class, and it's those connections that are really lasting. There's the power of peer connections and just putting your students into groups. There's so many studies that talk about a network really helps students' success in education. So putting them in groups of 3 or 4, and that's their familia for the semester. And they know that they can either go to that familia or they can go to you for questions. Respecting students as active players in their education. And so that's just validating our students. One of our famous or like really popular icebreakers is asking students what they're an expert on. Because when they come into our classrooms, they think they know nothing. And they're like, oh God, I have to sit through this English class. I don't know anything. I'm horrible, right? How many times have we heard our students say, I'm horrible at English. I'm horrible at math. I'm horrible at science, right? Or biology or whatever. So it's validating that they're experts on something and then showing them that maybe you're not an expert, right? There's so many things that I don't know anything about. And admitting that you're like, yeah, I know a lot maybe about writing about essays, but I don't know about anything about cars, right? I was thinking about our automotive department. I know absolutely nothing about cars. And so acknowledging that, incorporating the culturally responsive teaching, right? Which is what I just went over, all those different things that you can put in together. Celebrating our location, population, and stories. And I'm going to say it again, it's incorporating our community in our classroom, whether the students go to a place or you bring in the community to the classroom. And then our last step is creating an awareness, right, of what services we have for them. So many times students don't know that we have a writing center, we have tutorial services, that financial aid. There's just so many things that we have student clubs. And so making an awareness, something I've done in the past is I've created a scavenger hunt that the first week of school, the students have to do and take pictures along the way, and they submit the pictures, and that's the assignment, right? And they'll do it in their group, in their familia. And then suddenly that group is a little bit more friendly with each other because they've broken the ice and they've walked all over campus, right, trying to find these resources. And so that's really helpful. So those are steps that we've put into place to help. When we say Pasofy your classroom, these are ways that you can Pasofy your classroom. You don't have to do all of them, but you'll be amazed how just even one will make a huge difference, not just in your student success, but also in their retention, right? Keeping them in the classroom and making them believe that they can move forth in their academic career. Okay, questions, comments? You want to just raise your hand, and then we can open our mics up. No? Okay, love the scavenger hunt. If anyone wants the scavenger hunt too, just email me and I can send you what I have and you can adjust for yourself. Thank you, Ted. Okay. If we go ahead, I heard a mic.
Yeah, hi Yasmin. I turned my mic on. I had a question.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for this presentation, and I wanted to follow up with something that Fariba had brought up earlier, and I think you kind of touched on an idea there. How do we connect with these students that when we have an online class, how do we make those connections? And you mentioned two things. One was messages that just say, hey, how are you? And the other was the idea of groups. So could you tell me, how do you put your groups together? Because that's something that sometimes I think I have the most struggle with, is how to get the students to all work in groups, or not necessarily to complete working groups, but how to arrange them so that they can kind of create that network.
Right. So I do check on them often, as I said. The group, oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. That's because I just saw Fariba put, I cannot hear anything.
Oh, I see.
Yes, okay. So maybe, yeah, refresh your page. Well, she typed it, she can't hear me. Ha. So one of the things that you can do for groups is maybe, for me, for example, I have them read a novel together. And then they won't have an assignment that they're going to work on as a group, but they can talk to each other about the novel. The other thing I did in like my Chicano Lit class, I put them in a group early on, and they did an assignment together. And I found that some groups worked super, super well and they have like a network, and some of them are like, no, I hate my group. Yeah. So, and that happens. So one thing I've done is I've also asked students, hey, is there anyone that's interested in having like a study buddy? And then the students will tell me yes, and the ones that respond, I'll put them together.
Okay.
Because sometimes some students don't want to do, they're like, I want to come to school, I want to do my work, I want to go, I have a life. And they're very successful in that way. But there's some who do need a network. And so who wants a study buddy works super well too. And then you can put them in groups that way.
I like this flexibility that you talk about, the flexibility to meet the students where they are. I think that is a theme I keep seeing through. It must make it work really nicely.
Yeah, I think because there's so many different personalities that we're dealing with that not like we can't have a cookie cutter way of approaching it. And so yeah, some of them would really want the extra. The other thing I'll do also is on certain assignments, like in my creative writing class, I have 4 major creative writing assignments they have to do, and I'll offer them extra credit to meet with me instead of just grading my giving written feedback. So this week was one of those weeks, and in 3 days I met with 15 students.
Wow.
Out of the 25 or out of the 23. So,
wow.
And then some of them were just like, I can't do it. The first time around, I had 19 and I met with 19 students in 3 days. And our conversations are quick, like 10, 15 minutes. So I know when I say this, you're like, oh my God, 10, 15-minute conversations. We would talk about their work. They would ask me questions and I'd say like, okay, great. Have a great day. Bye. And then some of them wanted to talk a little bit more. So I would use the full 30 minutes because I scheduled them for 30 minutes. So the 30-minute people, we would talk and talk and talk. The 10, 15-minute people, they're like, okay, thank you. And then they leave and they're really happy to just speak with me. So that's really helpful with online learning too. And the ones who want to do it, do it. The ones who don't.
I like that. I like that a lot.
What are your hours when you're meeting with students? Okay, so via text on Reminds, my hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. I used to have Saturday hours, and this semester I needed a little bit more time for myself, so I adjusted that. So from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. they can text me and I will respond. My video office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then within that week though, they can set an appointment with me. So the latest I've ever met with a student is like 5 p.m. So we were done by like 5:30. Does that help, Edith? Let's see, those workshop. Edith, or sorry, Renee, those workshops are not. Google Doc, yeah. Okay. I recently started offering option of working in groups and working solo for assignments. I like the idea. Okay. Texting is interesting. Maybe I should do that. I love texting. I love it. Like one of my icebreaker assignment in my online classes, like, so they sign up for Remind. I don't give them the option for that, is that they send me their favorite meme. And I get the funniest memes. And then you have a sense of your students' personalities because they just send you, obviously I say course appropriate. And it works really nice. And you will sometimes get texts after 6 p.m. and you know what? You just don't answer them because then you're enabling them, right? I'll answer the next morning.
I love this so much. I'm so excited right now. I love this meme idea. I love having them. They'll do it. They'll send me funny memes, and I'll have funny memes.
They'll send you the funniest memes, and it's so great. And some of them some of them make their own meme for you.
Oh
They're like, I made this. And I was like, wow, I didn't even ask for that. I thought that you were just going to screenshot something offline. They'll make the meme, and it's great.
I love it.
It does give me cool points, Renee. Yeah. Any other questions for me? Okay, then I'm gonna, because I'm quickly, I believe, running out of time. So this is the end of my presentation. I still have a little bit more, but if there's any questions, please reach out to me or Crystal or Arturo Valdespino or Lucia. We do have a survey that we want you to take before the end of the training. And that's just to know where you are of like if you want to be involved and how involved you want to be with us. Do you just want to teach and take some of this culturally relevant teaching skills and put them in your classroom? Do you want to be part of a team? And maybe scholarship is really near and dear to your heart. So do you want to be on a scholarship team, or do you want to help me create these trainings? Do you have some cool ideas on how we could make it bigger and better? So that's really what we're looking for, right? Is we want you to be involved because we felt just like our students, we can often feel like we're just floating out in space, right? And Pasos allows you to be as involved as you would like to be. Thank you, Lucy. Next, what I'm going to show you, if you want to screenshot this, or my presentation will be available after. These are just some resources that I've found that are really helpful for me, that I've read and have been super great. You can incorporate them either in your class, and you can read them for yourself. So there's some essays about cultural experiences, and this is an anthology put together by America Ferrera. And there's different ethnicities and different races, and they tell you about their reflections of living between cultures. Activism, Hope for a New Generation is really great because these are targeting a younger demographic. These are also helpful sites. If you want to take a picture, like I said, or this will be available. I'm going to go to the next one. Podcasts. I'm a big fan of podcasts. These are great podcasts that you can listen to about just culturally relevant teaching, how teaching your students to thrive, considering culture, all these wonderful things that we've been talking about. There's also a list of social media that you can check out, that I'm a big fan of. I love Instagram, and I'll go through these, and there's some really thought-provoking posts, and then they're often linked to like articles or things like that. And then the last one is a list of books that I've read that I found very helpful in learning me. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting my words. In teaching me not just about what I can do for my students, but my own learning about my own biases, learning about my own preconceptions, and sort of restructuring those for myself, right? And learning about myself and my role, not just as an educator, but as a person and as a human being. And so these have all been really helpful to me. So I hope that you'll check out one or all of these. That would be great. But even if you just start with one book, one podcast, you'll learn just so many wonderful things that you can connect back to the classroom, and hopefully you'll be a part of Pasos.